Ford. All right. Good afternoon, PittNUG members. This webinar is SuiteAnalytics for Dummies. Not that you guys are dummies, but I did not come up with that title. And in this 15-minute webinar, the presenter is Emily, our own GYF, Emily Stein, who is a senior consultant at Grossman Yanak Ford. And Emily, I'm going to mute, but I will be here listening. So go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining. And for the record, Angie came up with the SuiteAnalytics for Dummies. So yes, you're not all dummies. But we're going to talk today just a little bit about SuiteAnalytics at a high level. I know SuiteAnalytics is kind of this thing that everybody talks about and nobody really seems to have cracked the code on yet, unless you've really spent a lot of time in it. So the purpose of today is just kind of give you all a high level so that you can feel confident to actually start to look at it yourself. So let me click here. And yes, Angie is here, but she's probably not going to be chatting much. So you guys are stuck with me. But we're just going to talk an overview about how.
I'll pipe in.
I'll pipe in. Just an overview about how SuiteAnalytics kind of functions, and then some examples so that you can start to tie it together in your brain, and then some pros and cons, because like everything, SuiteAnalytics isn't quite perfect. So just at a very high level of SuiteAnalytics, a few things to bring up. SuiteAnalytics, number one, is not the same thing as NetSuite's SuiteAnalytics Connect, which has the ODBC drivers. So that's kind of a big point of confusion that a lot of people have. Everybody has SuiteAnalytics, it comes free with your NetSuite subscriptions. Not everybody has SuiteAnalytics Connect, and SuiteAnalytics Connect is what you need to have ODBC drivers. So just want to clarify that. The language they gave everything is a little confusing, but this is everybody who has NetSuite has access to SuiteAnalytics. And all Suite Success editions come with different pre-canned workbooks, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But if you have a Suite Success edition, there is some pre-canned stuff that came with that is relevant to your edition. So whether you're a nonprofit, a manufacturer, whatever it is, Suite Success comes with pre-canned stuff for you. So at a very high level, SuiteAnalytics is basically made up of two things: data sets and workbooks. And it's easy to kind of break it down and just think data sets are what gives me the information for my workbook, and my workbook is how I display a data set. So I'm going to go through that a little bit more in detail, but just at a high level, again, data sets are the information, workbooks are how you format it. It's important to understand the lingo so that you can actually navigate in SuiteAnalytics. So going into this a little bit more, data sets are how you decide what information you want to query. So for those of you who know NetSuite, it's very similar to save searches. It's set up in kind of a similar structure as a save search, where you basically filter down what information you're looking at, and then you pull in the results that you want to pull from that information. So you can say, I want to make a data set that's all my invoices for this month, and I want to pull back all this information about them, or kind of whatever you can come up with, the information that you want to pull out of NetSuite. There are pre-configured data sets in your Suite Success Edition, just like there are some pre-configured save searches. You can also make your own from scratch if you want to. And then the one thing that's kind of important to mention about data sets, again, if you have worked with NetSuite, you know save searches, and you know what's kind of called the hop limitation. Everybody has a different word for hop, but basically your save search can't go more than one level down in information. Data sets can get beyond that, which is very helpful. So you can link through multiple levels of records to pull information. That's kind of the big advantage that data sets have, and one of the reasons it can be helpful to start using SuiteAnalytics instead of save searches. So I wanted to mention that. And then kind of the last thing to know about data sets is they can be linked together with common results, which I'm going to get into that a little bit more with workbooks. but just know, like, you can pull a data set of one set of information and you can pull a data set with another set of information, and you can actually link those together in a workbook if you have some kind of common information between the two data sets. So that really opens it up to be a lot more powerful than saved searches. You can't like link a bunch of saved searches together, but you can do that with data sets. And just to show you, to kind of orient you, so this is what the analytics tab looks like. This is just a demo set account I'm in. But this is, if you click on analytics, you can see workbooks and data sets. The data sets just kind of look like a list like this. And you can either say like new data set to build your own from scratch, or you can click on one of these pre-canned ones, again, that came with your Suite Success subscription. And then once you actually open a data set, this is what it looks like. You can see it's laid out a little bit differently, but you've got kind of all your components on the left, all the fields that you can pull from those, and then you can filter it up here, and the results are returned in this space here. So again, it's a little different than like save search you might be used to, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to kind of drill down into everything. So that's a high level of data sets. Again, those are the information you're trying to query. This is how you pull your data into one place. The next step is the workbooks, so how you present those. So as I said, again, this is how you're presenting your data sets so that somebody can actually make use of the data. And you have a couple different options for how you present those. You can either do a table, a pivot, or a chart. And I'm going to show examples of those here soon. But basically, workbooks, again, we clicked on the analytics tab. Workbooks are just right next to data sets in here. And you can see these are some of those pre-canned Suite Success ones I was talking about. This was a manufacturing demo account I was in, so there's like a manufacturing workbook. But you can create these different workbooks that can then be shared with other users in your system so that they can look at them. And within the workbook, as I said, you can display your information in different ways. So you'll see here up at the top, this is just the generic manufacturing workbook. But there are all these, it's kind of like tabs on an Excel spreadsheet. There are different tabs of information within a workbook, and you can choose how you want to present those. So the first way you can present stuff is just a table of data, which you can see here. This looks like an Excel table. It's like not super exciting. It just has all the columns of the data that you have. So that's kind of the most basic level. You can just do a table and present all your data in here and look at it. You can also pivot information. So this is another way to use a workbook. You can put a pivot into your workbook, which this is more similar to like a pivot table that you'd see in Excel. This example here is their production cost per period by assembly. So you can see they've got an item down the right, then they pivoted the periods across the top, and they pulled in the amounts. So this is where the information starts to come alive a lot more. You're not having to pull a bunch of save searches and rip it into Excel and do all this. You can do this straight from SuiteAnalytics in a workbook, as long as your data sets have brought in all the information you need. So I think this is a really powerful kind of view that you have available in workbooks. And then the other option you have is to do a chart, which is just like the prettiest option. You can do different graphs and charts. If you want to put this, show this to somebody in whatever format, you can do kind of these more cute charts. So I think the charts are the prettiest, the tables are the most granular, but the pivots in the middle, I personally think are kind of the sweet spot for presenting useful information in a readable format. But again, you can have all of these in one workbook. So this manufacturing workbook has a bunch of different kind of tabs that you can present all this information in different ways. So dashboards, I do want to point out, these can be put on your dashboards. So this is one of the charts that was in this pre-canned manufacturing workbook from the Suite Success edition. This is available to go on a user's dashboard. So you can add this nice little chart to your CFO's dashboard for whatever they want to look at. All of this stuff is available to be dashboarded, which also makes this very powerful. So you're not, again, ripping it into Excel, turning it into something, and then sending it back to somebody via email. So going into a couple quick examples, just to give you guys again some kind of practical knowledge to tie this down. This is an example of the board metrics workbook. So a lot of you might be familiar with like the board metrics dashboard portlet, but there's now a Suite Success board metrics workbook, which you can see across the top. There's all these different options. We have expenses, detail, revenue detail, sales detail, receivables, like all this information came in this pre-canned workbook, and it's all available in there. It's already formatted as charts. It's already pulled the right information in here. So we really want to encourage people to go look at the workbooks that are already available in your account, because there's a good chance that there's some pretty useful ones for your users in the system. And then I just wanted to give a couple other examples of ways I've seen SuiteAnalytics actually get used out in the wild. So one is providing like a summary of dropship information. So it was a pivot table that showed each customer, the vendors that had dropshipped to them, and then the quantity of items that had been sent by vendor month over month for a period of time. So again, that's a useful, like if you try to do that in a save search, that's going to get really out of hand really quickly. You can easily do that in SuiteAnalytics in a pivot table and see that kind of month over month displayed and conglomerated in a nice way. Another one, I should have put a little asterisk by this. You can sort of make a trial balance by custom segment in SuiteAnalytics, which has been a popular ask in the past. It gets a little bit out of control with like net income and equity, but it gets a lot closer to replicating a trial balance by custom segment than anything else that NetSuite's been able to produce, which is helpful. And then another example is lot number tracking. So this is what I was talking about with linking data sets earlier. You can link together receipts and fulfillments by their lot or serial number and show the related transactions to show what receipt a lot came in on and what fulfillment it went out the door on. So again, these are kind of specific examples that may or may not relate to you, but it shows you how you can really kind of take your information to the next level all in SuiteAnalytics, and you don't have to sit there and rip it out into Excel. And then the last thing I want to quickly discuss, because I know it's already 12:13. Last thing is just some pros and cons. So obviously there are a lot of pros with SuiteAnalytics. You can get past some of the limitations that save searches have. You can make things look a lot more visually pleasing. You can put them on dashboards. Like it really is a pretty robust tool if you know how to use it. And it also integrates with NetSuite's new data warehouse. So those are all, again, very good things. This is a great tool. There are some drawbacks to it. Number one, it is a bit of a steep learning curve, which is kind of why we wanted to have this webinar. If you don't really know at all how it works, it can be a little overwhelming at first, but hopefully you won't be overwhelmed after this. And other issues is it does force you to stay in NetSuite a little bit more, because the workbooks do not export in the most user-friendly fashion. I had a pivot table that like looked really, really great in SuiteAnalytics, and then I went to export it. It doesn't export as nicely as you'd like it to, which is a little frustrating. And also, these can have very heavy data loads, which can cause, what NetSuite does is they kind of cache the information as you're building it, but that just means you have to do more like refreshing. And it can also be really slow if you're sitting there trying to pull a ton of data in. So similar to, a recommendation we'll make with searches, if you're trying to build a data set, it's good to start with like one transaction, filter it down to one transaction so you can figure out all the fields you need to return, rather than sitting there and trying to return like 30 fields for tens of thousands of transactions. You're just going to slow the system down if you do that. So again, just some pros and cons at a high level. It is very powerful though. And with that, I'm going to say, does anybody have any questions? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
I just want to bring up something about historical data. If you've recently gone live with NetSuite, or you've always wanted to bring historical data over, NetSuite's very generous right now on discounting their NetSuite Analytics Warehouse, which is basically their answer to Power BI. And if you dump your historical data into that, you do have access through SuiteAnalytics workbooks to access all your data. So that's another, Emily brought it up, but it seems like NetSuite's being much more generous on discounting for that.
Well, usually we don't have a lot of questions, so this is what we expect, but it is recorded. The webinar's recorded. I will post it. I will send an email out after it's posted for anyone that wants someone else to take a look or wants to review it. If you have any questions, obviously, please reach out to me. Email me any questions or anything else that you need to know about it. And I guess that's it. Thank you, Emily, for your presentation. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And with that, I'm going to end the meeting. So thanks everyone.
For joining.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Yep. Thank you.